All right, in this lesson, we're going to be adding sound effects and music into our game project. Whenever our robot does a little jump, or collects a coin, or squashes an enemy, all of those little events in our game are going to have a sound effect. And in our game menus and in our game level, we're also going to add music to make the game a little more lively. And in this lesson, I'll be showing you how to make what I call a sound manager, which is going to be a scene that helps manage sounds that can play continuously across game screens. But let's go ahead and jump in. The first thing I'm going to do is grab a couple of folders that are on my desktop here called music and sound effects. In each one of these folders, I've collected an assortment of different sound files for, you guessed it, music, and the other folder has sound effects in it. All of these files are what are called OGG files, which are sound files. I'll go ahead and give you a preview of the jump sound for my little robot character if I go ahead and open it up. That's it. That's the sound for my little jumping robot. But what I'm going to do is take those two folders, I'll select them, I'll copy them with Control-C on my desktop, and I'll go into my project folder, into my project's assets folder, where I'm keeping things organized. I'm going to go ahead and paste Control-V on my keyboard, those two folders with all of those sound files. Of course, you can go ahead and get all of those files together in a zip file, which you can go ahead and follow along with me in this lesson, of course. Let's go ahead and jump back into the Godot editor here. What I'm going to do first is add a couple of sounds to very easy spots in my game that are not going to cause us any problems. The first sound I'm going to add is my little robot jumping. So I'm going to go to my robot scene, which is right here, Steve, but I'm going to go into his scene because into his scene, I'm going to add a new node which lets us play sound. Now, I actually noticed that in an earlier lesson, I forgot to get rid of this mesh, the old version of my character. So I'll select that mesh and that mesh, the mesh and the face, and I'll right click on them and delete and press OK just to clean up my scene a little bit. I'm going to go ahead and select the root node of this scene because I'm going to add a node which lets me play sound. That node, I'll go ahead and press the plus button with my root node selected still, is under the very first list of nodes in this node tree. It is called Audio Stream Player. If I go ahead and double click on Audio Stream Player, it'll add that node, of course, into my robot scene. With an Audio Stream Player node selected, if I go over to the inspector, there's an empty spot for a stream. A stream is a sound file, essentially. So I can go ahead into my file system doc, into my assets folder, into my sound effects folder, and I'll find that sound file called jump-jump4.ogg. By the way, I got all of these sound files from kenny.nl. I have no association with them whatsoever, but all of the sound effects that kenny.nl makes, as far as I know, are Creative Commons 0 licensed, which means they are free to use for anybody in any project that you like. But I'm going to go ahead and take this sound file and drag it into that empty stream spot. In fact, you should know that when you double click on a sound file over here in the file system doc, if I go ahead and double click on it, it'll open up a preview window with information about the sound file, and I can simply press play before I even add it into my game project. So you can preview sounds here. I'm going to go ahead and press close though, because I have added it into my robot scene. Now, how do I actually get this sound to play? Because an audio stream player node won't play automatically. If I actually go over to the inspector, there's a little button here called doc. And if I click on this button, it'll switch me over into the script workspace, into that type of node, an audio stream player node in this case, into its documentation. If I scroll down in the documentation, it'll show me everything, of course, about this type of node, including all of its properties, its variables, its methods. It turns out that there's a method called play. So when you tell an audio stream player to play, it'll play its sound. Go figure. If I go into Steve's code, I can now reference this audio stream player and tell it to run that play method to make it sound play. I think I should name the audio stream player node here though. I'm going to call it sound jump. And I'll press enter, no spaces in that name, of course. And then in my character's code, I'm going to find the section of code where I handle jumping. In this case, it's right here on line 35 through 37. I'm going to add one more line into this section right in the if statement results section here. I'm going to select that node that we just named sound jump. So I'll type a $sign and say sound jump. And then I can say dot play and then parentheses, and that's it. So when I press the space bar, which is UI accept, and I'm on the floor, I will jump, but I'll also play the jump sound. Okay, pretty simple. If I go ahead and press Control S to save, and then I press play to play my project, and then I press play in my game menu. If I press jump, the space bar, I jump and I play a jump sound. That's great. So I can jump around my level. That's great. What other sounds can I add? Well, I'm going to choose one more that I know isn't going to give us any problems, and that happens to be when you squash an enemy. In our enemy scene, there is, of course, a top checker, and when your character enters that top checker area 3D, well, we're causing our little enemy to do lots of things like look squashed and stop moving and count down to it deleting itself. All of those things happen. So I'm going to go into an enemy scene because I think that's a good time to play a squash sound. In an enemy scene, I'll click on the little scene clapboard icon right there. I'll select the enemy root node. I'll press plus. I'm going to add an audio stream player here from my recents. I'll go ahead and double click. I'm going to name this audio stream player sound squash, like that. If I have it selected and then I find my sound file, which is squash-jump2.ogg, and I drag it into the stream empty slot, that should work. Of course, I can go ahead and double click on it over here as well to preview it before I actually try running it in my game. I'll go ahead and press play. That's a squash sound. Now, if I think a sound is too loud, what I can do is I can select the node that's going to play it, the audio stream player, and I can go over to volume in decibels, and I can type in an increasing number or a decreasing number. In this case, I'm going to say -15 and press enter. That'll turn the sound quite a bit down, which I think I should do in this case. So I'll press Control S to save. And then in my enemy's script, what I think I need to do is find the function called onTopCheckerBodyEntered, which is what handles the squashing of my enemy. And I'm going to say, right after we play the squash animation on the enemy, I'm going to grab, using a $sign, that sound squash node, and I'll put a dot and play, bracket, bracket. There we go. I'll press Control S to save. And then if I go up and press play, let's go ahead and see what happens if I jump on an enemy. There it is. That's the squash sound. It's a little tricky to do and aim. So I'll see what I can do here. There it is. Okay, that's our squash sound. I might want to go back after I've tested it to my Steve scene and the sound jump and turn the volume down. You can look at the waveform here of the sound, which will give you an idea. If it's right up to the top and the bottom of this little preview, it's quite a loud sound. So I'll turn this down to, let's say, -20 or so, which is quite a lot quieter, and press Control S to save, of course. Now, there's going to be a problem with some of my sounds because there are times when sounds should play, but right after those sounds do play, the scene in your game switches to a different scene right away. I'll give you an example. If I jump back over in my file system doc, I'll go ahead and find this, to my menu title screen, which is right here. I'll go ahead and load it up on my screen. I think that when you press the play button, that it should play a little sound. Anything that's interactive in your game is heightened by there being sound when the user actually interacts with it. Now, in this case, if I were to go into my root of the menu's code and find that when I press a button, it changes the scene, well, you might think that before that line of code, I could reference an audio stream player that I could add into this scene, and I could simply say, hey, sound button, I want you to play your sound. The problem is that that sound would start playing, but then right away on the very next line, which happens instantly after the line before it, it would switch to a different scene and the sound would get cut off and you wouldn't even hear it play. This happens a lot of times in our game level as well. If I switch back into my game level and my 3D environment, if I hit an enemy from the side, well, I should probably hear a sound for that, except, as you know, when your robot hits the enemy from a side, you also go immediately to the game over screen. so you wouldn't hear that sound of your collision against the side of the enemy. The same thing goes with the fall zone. When you fall off the side of a platform and you go into the fall zone, it goes to the game over screen. So if we played a sound at that time, it would get cut off as well. So how do we solve this? Well, what I do is I create a new scene that I call a sound manager. Let's go up to the plus button and make a new empty scene here, which I'm going to start with a root node of a control node. So I'll press the user interface button to make a root control node. It doesn't actually matter what you use as a root node, but a control node works fine. I'll go ahead and name this node sound manager with no spaces, of course. Now, this scene is going to act like an ever-present scene that you can't see, but is always running in the background that you can call upon to run the sounds of your game that you want to keep playing across the transition between two different game scenes. So what I'm going to do here is, with my root node selected, I'm going to add an audio stream player. So I'll go ahead and find it in my recents here and double click. What I'm going to do now is name this node sound, and this is going to be for the enemy hurting you. So I'm going to call this sound enemy, and I'll press enter. If I go down to my file system doc, I should have a sound file for that in my assets folder. It should be called enemy-lose. So with that node selected, I'll drag this sound file over into the stream. If I go ahead and double click on it over here, this is what it sounds like. That's for when I hit the side of an enemy. It's kind of a lose sound. So I'll close that. I'll turn down the volume to about -20 decibels or so. And now I want this scene to be loaded alongside my game project when my game project loads its start menu title screen. How do I get this scene to load at the same time as my main title menu screen? Well, if I go up to the project settings here under project settings, if we go over to the auto load tab, you might recall this is where we added a global script file that should be loaded when our game first loads, which we're using to keep track of how many coins we've collected. It turns out here that you can actually auto-load scenes as well that will run in the background, which is what we want to do. So up in the path, I'll go ahead and click this little folder icon to open that sound manager. And it looks like we actually haven't saved it yet. So I'll go back and press close and save this scene, Control S, and call it soundmanager.tscn. That's a good name. We'll go back to project settings, and under autoload, I'll load that sound manager scene right here and press open. And we can refer to it in code from anywhere in our project with the name sound manager with camel case notation, capital S, capital M. I'll press add. That's important to do. And then I can press close. Now to run that sound enemy sound, I have to call upon my sound manager from anywhere in my project, most likely on my enemy itself in this case, and I can simply tell this node to play. If I go into my enemy scene to my enemy's code, what I should do is find the section of code that handles the sides checker, which is right here, I think, function on sides checker body entered. I will in fact zoom in a little bit on that so you can read that a bit easier on your screen. Before, when you hit the side of the enemy, before you switch to the game over screen on line 44 of my code, we're going to play that sound. So I'm going to call upon the sound manager using that keyword sound manager in camel case. And now after a dot, I have to find that node in the sound manager, the sound enemy, I think it was called. If I jump back over to that scene, yeah, sound enemy. I need to select that node and then tell it to play. Now, because I'm using a dot before I want to select that node, I can't just use a $sign and say $sound enemy. I have to use instead the alternative, which is called get_node. Now, this is kind of a clunky way of getting a reference to this node from a different scene, so I'll show you a better way. But here I could say get the node called sound enemy. And then after I've selected it, I could say .play. If I go ahead and save the enemy scene, which I'm working on its code right now, and I press play scene, let's see if it works. I'll go ahead and play. There we go. You heard the sound there for hitting the side of an enemy. I don't like doing it this way by referencing the name of a node. So instead, what I'm going to do is in my Sound Manager scene, I'm going to add a script file onto the root node, which I can then create functions for to easily point to the different nodes that I'm making to play sounds. You'll see what I mean. If I go ahead and select the Sound Manager root node and press Add Script, when I add a script onto the root node of a scene that's being auto-loaded, by the way, it will automatically run this code file as well, so I can access it from any other part of my whole project using the same keyword, Sound Manager, of course. So I'll make this GD script file and I'll press Create. I'm not changing anything there. In this script file, what I'm going to do is make a new function. I don't need any of the old ones, called func. I'll zoom in a little bit here, and I'm going to call it play_enemy sound. I'm making this function because on the script file of my Sound Manager, I can easily refer to nodes that are part of this scene. And from outside of the Sound Manager scene, when I'm calling it from somewhere else in my game, I can't easily select subnodes of the scene like I just showed you. So instead of having to say, like in my enemy script, get the node called sound enemy, I'm going to call a method that we're making right now instead. So in the Sound Manager's script, I'm going to add into this function, we're going to select the $sound enemy node just like that and tell it to play its sound like that. Okay, that's simpler. And now if I save that and then go back to my enemy script, I have all of my scripts open here actually, then I can change this to Sound Manager dot play enemy sound bracket. There we go. That's easier, I think. At least it's much more elegant in my opinion. So now if I go and press play and I go with my character and I touch the side of an enemy, you heard the sound, it worked. Okay, so I'm going to do that one more time, I think. The next example I'm going to give you is the coin sound. So if I go and find a coin, it doesn't have to be in my viewport, it should be in my scene dock over here. I'll find any coin and go into its scene. I could, of course, add an audio stream player right in the coin scene to play the coin sound. However, when you collect all the coins in the game to win the game, but as you're collecting the last coin, it actually won't play its sound because as soon as you touch that last coin, well, it'll jump right over to the you win screen. So I'm not going to put an audio stream player in my coin scene. Instead, it'll be in the Sound Manager scene. So what I'll do is just duplicate my sound enemy node, right click on it and say duplicate. I'll rename it to sound coin, of course, and then I'll go ahead and update its sound by finding my coin sound here, and I'll drag it into the stream to replace the old one. It's a quieter sound, so I think I'll use -15 or so, and I think that should be fine. So I'll press Control S to save. But now in my Sound Manager's script, what I have to do is make a function called play coin sound. I'm naming that however I want, but I'm going to be consistent about it. So they're all named roughly the same thing or in the same format. Okay, this function needs one line of code. I'm going to select the node called sound coin and tell it to play. It's simply that easy. I'll press Control S to save, but now my coin needs to know to play that sound when it's collected. So in my coin scene, in the coin script, I will go and find the section of code called onBodyEnter. This is the function that handles when your game character enters the area 3D of the coin. It doesn't matter if the number of coins collected will make you win. No matter what, we should hear a coin collected sound. So right up here at the top, or right near the top, I'll call upon my Sound Manager to play its coin sound. So play_coin_sound bracket. There we go. If I save that and then press play, of course, I should be able to now play the game and then collect a coin. There we go. And I collect any number of coins that I want. Okay. So in my game level, I'll go back and look at my game level here. There's only one more sound effect that I'm going to be adding in this lesson to this scene, and that is falling into the fall zone. And that's going to be this sound called fall-game over 2. But then in my title menu, and whenever you click a button, it should play the button sound. So I'm going to be adding both of those into my sound manager because both of those are instances of sounds that would get cut off by you changing your scene in your game. But because I'm repeating the same steps that you've already just seen twice now, I'm going to speed this next part of the video up. Okay, so I've gone ahead and added the sound effect to all of the buttons on all of the game menus. So in my sound manager scene, I've added a sound button audio stream player, a sound fall audio stream player. I've added functions into my sound manager's script called play sound button and play sound fall. In my level 1 scene on the fall zone, I recognize that the fall actually being detected is not on any script on the actual fall zone area 3D. The script is handled by Steve's code. So I double clicked on that handling function there. It jumped me into Steve's code where there's a function called on fall zone body entered. I called the play fall sound from the sound manager here. Likewise, in all 3 of my game menus, the game over menu, the win menu, and the title menu, I called the same exact line of code, sound manager.play button sound. Let's just go back to the sound manager code file to double check if everything looks right here. And it looks like I've actually misnamed these function calls here. For the top 2 functions, I named them play enemy sound with the word sound at the end. However, in the last 2 functions, I named them with the word sound in the middle. So that's a little bit confusing. So I'll change them here first before I try this out. Play button underscore sound. And I'll do the same thing with the lower one as well. Play fall sound. Like that. I'll save it and I'll press play. And so now if I press the play button, hey, it played the little sound. And if I jump off the edge, that's my fall off the cliff fall sound. It worked well. Great. Next up is, of course, music. If I head on over to my level 1 scene and take a look at it, you might be tempted to hear just add an audio stream player directly into the level so that you can tell it to play when the level starts. However, I'm going to recommend here that you use your sound manager because there may be times when you want to control the sound in a game level or screen from another screen. Let's go ahead and start off with the music that plays in the game title screen. What I'm not going to do here is simply add an audio stream player into the screen. Let's do things from the sound manager. So I'm going to make, in my sound manager scene, a new audio stream player. I'll go ahead and right click on an audio stream player here and say duplicate. I'm going to name this one music menu. Now, just to make this a little bit harder on myself, I'm going to actually make the music propagate or keep playing across all of my menu screens. So in other words, if you're playing the game and let's say your little character touches an enemy, well, then you would go to the game over screen and you would start hearing the menu music. But typically in a game menu, the music is persistent. So if you're on the game over screen menu and you press the play again button or the go back to the main menu button, the music shouldn't cut off when you go between the game over screen and the title screen. The music should be continuous and just keep playing. That'll make it a little bit trickier for us to make, but let's go ahead and try it out. Because of this, I'm not actually going to tell my title menu to play any music when it loads, because it might be that I'm going from the game over or the you win screen back to this screen, and that other menu screen, game over or you win, will have started the music, and therefore this screen shouldn't really have its own music. It should just be continuing the music that started on one of the other menu screens. Makes sense? To accomplish this in my sound manager, of course, my music menu node that I just made needs to have a music file loaded into it. I have 2 sound files here. One of them is for the game menu. It's called Retro Mystic, and here it is. Okay, while I'm here, I'm going to point out that by default in Godot 4 and later, sound files do not loop automatically. To make these two music files play again and again in a loop, in other words, when it gets to the end of this song, it'll just restart it right away, you have to enable in your file system doc loop on each of the sound files that you want to loop. It doesn't automatically. So what I have to do here is for each one, press this enable checkbox and then press re-import. Okay, I'll do the same thing here for level music. Here we go, here it is. Okay, so I'll press loop enabled and I'll re-import. There we go. With my music menu node selected, do I have that song appropriately loaded? No, I don't. So I'll drag it in. The menu music goes here. The music is kind of quiet, so I think I'll only lower it to about -10 or so, and I'll save that. Now, when my title menu loads, remember that I can't tell the music to play on this scene because, again, of those two other screens that'll be starting the music instead of this one. So instead, I'm going to go to the Sound Manager, and on the Sound Manager script, I'm going to make it have a ready function to play the menu screen music when the project first starts loading. And so it will not be tied with the actual menu title. It'll just start playing the menu music when the project loads, which happens to be exactly when the title menu loads as well. So up at the top of my Sound Manager code file, I'm going to make that special function called _ready, and I'm going to call upon that music menu to start. I don't have a play menu music function, so I should probably make one. Down at the bottom here, I'll make a function called play menu music, like that. And I'm going to get the node called music menu, and I'll press enter because it's auto-completing for me, and I'll tell it to play like that. Now that I have that function, I can call it up here. I'll call on play menu music like that. So when the project first loads, when I press play, it'll play the menu music. Let's see what it does. I'll save and I'll press play. There it is, okay? However, when I press the play button, the music keeps playing, but this is the menu music. So on the menu button of the title menu, I'm gonna go to my menu titles script here. We're gonna make it stop that sound right here. So I'm gonna access my Sound Manager from the on button pressed function call here, and I'm going to tell it to stop playing that sound. How do I do that? Well, in my Sound Manager's code right here, I need a stop menu music function as well. So right below play menu music, we're going to make a new one, func stop menu music, like that. And I'm going to tell the music menu to stop playing. Stop is a valid method that we can call to stop that node from playing its audio stream. Okay, so now back in my title menu, I can say Sound Manager, stop playing the menu music, like that. Okay, let's see what that does. I'll press play. The game menu loads and I can press play and the music stops appropriately. What happens if I go to a game over screen? If I hit an enemy, I want that menu music to start here. The same is true when I collect all of the coins in my game level. I want the you win screen to play that music as well. Well, it turns out in those cases, I can simply call a ready function on the root node of each of those menus to start that music playing. So I'm going to find those two scenes in my file system doc down here. They are called menugameover.tscn. I'll go ahead and load it up here, as well as menugamewin right here. On the root node of each, I'll go into its script here. We're going to make a ready function, func_ready, like that. And I'm going to call upon the Sound Manager here to play the menu music, like that. Okay, I'll save that. I'm going to copy that, Control C. I'm going to go over to my menu game over script, and I can paste that same function at the top. So when those two scenes first load, we play the menu music. I'll go ahead and try that out. I'll save and press play. So now if I play my game and I jump off the edge, we hear both the fall off the cliff sound and the menu music starts. However, when I press the button here to go back to the main menu, you notice how the music didn't cut off and then restart. That's what I was going for. Great. Can I test the you win scenario? Well, I think I have to go back to my, where is it? The global script file where I have the number of coins to win. I'm going to change that temporarily from 3 to 2. So I only have to collect 2 coins to win the game. So let's see if that works. I'll go ahead and press play. And now if I collect just 2 coins, it works. The sound or the music started playing. And if I press main menu, the music just kept going. Great. Last up is the music for level 1. So I'm not again going to add the music audio stream player to my level 1 scene. Instead, I'll go back to my sound manager. I'll duplicate music menu, that node, right click on it and say duplicate. I'm going to name this music level. With that node selected, of course, I can go down to my file system dock and find the right sound file, level retro beat. And with that node selected, I'll drag that sound file into the stream. It's about the same volume, maybe a little louder. So I'll turn it down to here, -12 or so. I think that should work. In my Sound Manager script file, of course, I should probably make a couple of functions exactly like play menu music and stop menu music for the game level music. So here I go. I'll speed this part of the video up. Okay, so there we go. I have my function set up. In my level 1 scene, I think that I should, on the root node's script here, I should add a ready function, which I already have here. But in that ready function, I should call upon my sound manager to play the level music like that. There we go. Is that enough to make it actually all work properly? Well, let's go ahead and try this out. If I press play, of course, my game will load, the music will load and start playing. I can play the game level. And the menu music stopped and the level music started. That looks good. However, if I touch an enemy, it's not so good, is it? It's playing the level music still, but it also started playing the menu music. So it's playing both music tracks at the same time. Ugh, I don't want this. The problem here is that we never told our level music to stop playing. Where should we do that exactly? Well, I think the easiest place to tell the level music to stop playing when we switch over to the game over or the you win screen is right when that menu screen game over or you win gets loaded with the ready function. So in the menu game over ready function code, we're going to tell the menu music to play, but we're also going to access first, hopefully, the sound manager and tell the, we'll call that stop level music to happen, just like that. I'm going to go ahead and copy that one line of code because we have to do this on both the game over screen. I'll press Control-C to copy and press Control-S to save. On my win screen code, I'll put that in the exact same place, Control-V, and I'll save it. There we go. If I go up and press play now, hopefully now you can hear that just the menu music is playing, but the real test here is we can hear the game level music playing now, but the real test here is we should now just hear the menu music, and we do. That's great. If I press main menu, the music just keeps playing, but if I go back to the game, it's playing only the level music, and now if I collect 2 coins to win the game, it's playing just the menu music now. It's stopped playing the level music. Perfect. It seems to work. Okay, that's how you add music and sound effects into your game project. As always, at the end of this lesson, I'll go ahead and put the code up on the screen that I typed in this lesson. We added code all over the place. So here on my game menu screen, we added some code into our button press and into our ready function to play sounds accessing the sound manager. And we also, on some ready functions throughout our project, access the sound manager to stop and play music as well. We also created a sound manager scene with a bunch of audio stream player nodes where we, in the sound manager script, made a bunch of play as well as stop sound and music functions to access those nodes in the scene, so we could access through our global sound manager file all of these functions quite easily from anywhere in our game project. But that's going to be it for this lesson. As always, thank you so much for watching and for making it to the end of this lesson. I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.